Hi, I'm Jean-Marc Couffin. I'm a senior BIM specialist for BIM 1. I've been a BIM consultant for the past 7 years, and I'm a trained architect. Today, I'm going to present to you something that I have close to my heart, is some of the stuff I've been doing with pyRevit. Most of you, if you're watching this conference or assisting to this conference, you probably know what pyRevit is and how it's related to Revit. It's a plugin for Revit. It allows you to build some new tools for Revit and also to use the ones that are already available with the tool itself. If you look at it like here, you should see that specific tab once you install the tool on Revit. So that's one thing. We have a new website for pyRevit. I'm part of it, so I pretty know the place. If you want to get the latest release, you can find it here. If you want to get the work in progress installers, actually the latest one is already ready for 2025, which is quite new. And over there, you will find the GitHub repo, the support on Open Collective if you want to, the forums, the documentation, the API documentation, and the developer documentation, and our YouTube channel. And you can find also a blog and the team over there with our ugly faces. Okay, so that's it for the website. That's not the topic of today, but I wanted to show you beforehand something I use all day, all the time, whenever I'm coding new tools for pyRevit. And one thing is the reference API that you can find on this website on docs.pyrevitlabs.io in the reference section in pyRevit. And here you'll find all the documentation of all the possible commands that you can have and definition that are already done for you so that you can prepare tools faster than you would do only using the Revit API. So that's one of the websites that we have on the side. Another one is the forum itself, where you have lots of action usually. And whoops, not this one. If I can click on that, we have the repo. So the repo is where the code is lying and where you can put your issues if you have some with the tool, and we are trying to reply and assert these ones as soon as we can. And we have some pull requests that you can obviously add your own code or change some of the code that is inside of pyRevit. So the topic itself is a bit different. It's not talking about the whole pyRevit team and everything. It's talking about one of the tools that is part of pyRevit is the pre-flight check. Pre-flight check is actually a sort of infrastructure for you to build some small or bigger checks to be able to assert the quality of your model. So for example, I have a model checker one, which is fairly complete. If I run this check, this is a normal window because of the JavaScript issue, but you will run this check and you will get some numbers around your Revit file. So this one is okay. That's a fairly old one, and that's something I really like to upgrade a bit. And to show you, we have other ones that are a bit simpler, and you could build your own, and that's what we're going to do together today. I'm going to base it on the grid data lister, one that I did not so long ago. And this one just lists all the grids, all the axes of your project here, and the type name of the family and the pin status, if it's pinned or not, and the scope box if you have a scope box assigned. So we're going to look at the code. We have only a few minutes for the presentation, so I'm just going to go quick on certain parts and maybe slower on other ones that I want to insist on. So whenever you have a check, the check is located in two possible locations. So one location is directly in the pyRevit master on the installation of pyRevit here. And if you go under checks here, you see I have my pyRevit master extension, my tools extension, my checks folder. And then here I have my model checker. And you can also find your own and make your own checks using making your own extension. So here, this is a folder I have created, BIM1 toolbar folder.extension, and I have a folder containing a folder named checks as well. That's important. The name is important. And a file that is named grids with check.py. If you don't have the check word, it's not going to work. So this is an example. That's the one we used just previously. So I'm going to go through the main parts, and then we're going to try to build live one for the levels, for example. So that's an easy one. That's pretty much the same logic. So going through the code here, if you have a language, if you're using a language in Revit that has accents, for example, like myself, I'm using French most of the time, so I have lots of accents. If you use German, you will have the same issue. You need to declare in IronPython, you need to declare the encoding. So the encoding is UTF-8. Once you declare that, you can use accents everywhere if you need to. After that, we import the basic imports of pyRevit, the modules of pyRevit, and we have a special one, the pre-flight one. The pre-flight one is just a wrapper around the check that allows the main infrastructure of the tool itself. So that means this window here is separated from the list of the checks that you see. So I'm just going to wait. It takes some time to load a bit because I have a few. These items are separate files, and the window itself is a separate script attached to that specific button. So that specific button is launching the window, which is calling a list of script inside the folder I showed you here, the checks one. So that's the whole thing. Usually you declare the document you're working on, and then after that we have a series of definition to collect the grids, collect the counts of the grids, the names, the types, if it's pinned or not, if there's a scope box, and then we have the main definition here, that is the checking of the model. So basically, this is where the different definition I talked about are listed. So here you see I have my grid names, types, pinned, scoped. So that's where I'm collecting in variables the information. And at the end of the day, I'm using one of the modules of pyRevit to print it as a table. And I'm just mixing and matching my list so that it displays properly in a table named grids with headers that are name, type, pinned, and scope box. And after that, I have a main class calling my pre-flight check test case, which is the thing I'm importing at the beginning here. And then after that, I just have basically a class where I could have information happening in the setup part. In the start test, that's where I'm calling my check model definition, and then I have a tear down and a doc cleanup action. So what we're going to do first, if you want to follow up, you can just duplicate one of the checks that you will find in your pyRevit installation. So I'm going to just copy this one, paste it, and rename it. So F2 for renaming. If you don't know that shortcut, it's useful. And we're going to make one for levels. Okay, so that's an easy one to start with. So basically the imports are pretty much the same. The document that we work on is the same, and then we're just going to rename most of the things here and change the category of the things that we're calling and look at the category and what are the methods and parameters that are available in the items in Revit. So first, I'm just going to rename that one. So it's not a grid collector, it's going to be a levels collector. So you can rename the items here in the old document, just pressing F2, and that's going to rename the symbol here. So that's a pretty useful shortcut. So here, instead of grids, I'm just going to name it levels to make it simple. Be clear when you use when you name variables in Python. No need to do camel case. The basic and logical way of doing it is usually to use regular characters and just be as explicit as you can and not too long. So after that, I go there and I have my filtered element collector. If you don't know this guy and you don't know what it's doing, in the Revit API, you can go in the documentation of the Revit API using that website, the API docs.co. That's a fairly good one. There are two actually on the market made by the same guy, Guy Talarico. Congrats to you. You did a great job and you've been doing that for years, we can tell. So if I type the filtered element collector class and I go there, I'm going to find the API documentation of Revit here in a pretty nice setup. And then I can click on that very little symbol here, the superior inferior tag, and it's going to play a search algorithm behind that's going to ask the question, where can you find the filtered element collector symbol in the GitHub repo that are listed in the backend of this website. So that's where you can find lots of examples if you don't know how it works. Most of these examples are C#, and you have a few in Python as well. So you see you have filtered element collector, doc, of category, and then the category name, and then cast two elements. So if you don't know what you're doing precisely, every time you can still look for information. Of category, you could do the same. Or if you have your stubs properly set up in VS Code, you can press F12 and it's gonna point you to all the methods that you have available here with some information on how to cast those. So let's go forward. So the category of what we're calling is levels. I know that because I've been working with the Revit API for quite a bit, but if you don't know it, you just click on that. You use a tool and install a tool named Revit Lookup. You can snoop the selection. And then from there, you will find the category Niveau in French. I should have put my Revit in English, but I forgot, so you will have to bear with me and enjoy part of it in French. But the built-in category name is OST levels here. That's what you see. So OST levels, that's what I got, and then I'm returning the value of the variable. And then here, same goes for that. Instead of the grid counts, I'm just going to do a levels count. Then I have my level collectors. I can get grids is not, yeah, I could name it just levels. That's okay here. And then I'm going to use a method that is attached to the filtered element collector category and constructor is the get element count. That's an easy one that's already built in, and that's the fastest one you can use instead of lengths for the lengths of the filtered element collector here. And here, one thing I didn't mention here is that we are not collecting the element type. We want the instances of the level. That means the ones that are placed in the model and not the ones that are available for placement. After that, we go past this, and then we could use the grid names and rename that and rename it levels. So you see, I'm not writing lots of code. I'm just changing my own code to make a different test specific for levels. So here, and then instead of grids here, again, levels, grid names, level names. I mean, I guess you get the drill. It's not a big thing to understand. Even if you don't know how to code properly, you can just reuse the code that is available on the internet. I'm going to publish that code after the presentation so that you have access to it once you install pyRevit as well. And then we get the level name, and we're calling the name of the level, and that should work. Some of the objects available in the Revit API do not work when you're calling their name like this, like with the variable, with the property name. In particular, that doesn't work whenever you're calling the name for a type. The type of an element, you cannot call its name directly like that. You have to go around the issue. There's a few ways to do it, and I'm going to show you a bit a bit down here, how to get the name of the types. Here, that's just the name of the instance, so I can grab it right off. And then the grid types, here will change to level types. I still have my level collector, that should be my level. I could have called my level collector and stored the variable outside of my definition, and that would have done the job as well, instead of calling that all the time, many times in a row. It's not very efficient. And you see, I don't have always a perfect code, and perfect code doesn't exist. But that's one way to improve the code, would be to just take that off and move it out of the definition, because it's been called many times in a row. The grid types goes to level types. And then level here. Grid type will go to grid, to level. We're almost there. Here from the level, I'm getting the type ID. So whenever you're asking a level what's its type, so if you look here for the type, one way to call it is to get it through the type ID. But the thing is, it's giving you the level type as an ID, and it's not what you need. You need the element itself. So one way to get the element after that would be to call from the document the get element, and then get it. This get element takes an element ID as an entry point. So that's how I get there. So that's the way to get my level type. Here, I'm just going to remove that. And here, I'm going to get the level type names through the parameter of the name of the level type. So I need to ask Revit how it's structured, because I don't know it by heart. If I'm trying to get the level type, I'm going to need to go to the type, like I did just earlier. Get the type here. And then from there, I need to go in the parameter section, and I should get the nom du type, type name, actually. And from here, if you take the definition name here, you can get what you need. That should be the same. Most of the type name are the same usually. So I'm just going to check, but yeah, that's the same. So no big deal. And then I need to get the parameter by its name and then cast it as a string. And that should give me the level type. Actually, instead of level types here, I should have level types names, which would make sense. After that, the pin status. So pretty much the same thing. If it's pinned or not, does a level, can a level be pinned? Yes, so that should work. Just renaming stuff again. Pinned levels. And then here level. And we should be good to go for that definition that is calling the pin status of the element, of each element. And then the grid scope box. Do we have a scope box for levels? Yes, we can check that too. So if I go there, oops. Do I have a scope box that is available? Yes, the zone de définition is a scope box, grids and levels, that's the name of it. And if I want to get it, if I go in the parameters of the element, and I go to the scope box, that's datum volume of interest. Volume of interest, that's the same parameter name. So we should be good to go. I'm just going to rename that to be consistent with everything. This one as well. So always using F2. And then scoped levels. Not very explicit name actually, but that should do it. So I have all that, scope. We're good to go. We are calling the name, and if there's known, we want to input known instead. And that should be good. Then I have my check. I have the output window. So the output window is part of the script module of pyRevit, and you can get the window as a variable, calling it through the get output into that variable output here. And then I can close the previously opened output. So that's what it's saying. Whenever you have your stubs properly done, or you go in the pyRevit documentation of the module, I can show you that. Let me check here. That should be close others. You see here in the documentation, you have the explanation of what close others is doing and what argument it takes if you need one. It's you already have a default one, and that's it. Usually you have also some samples some examples whenever there's a need for that, but for this one it's pretty simple. That's just a method attached to the the output itself. And then I can print from the output window. The output window actually is a web browser, and it can interpret the Markdown language. So that's what I'm using here, the method to print the Markdown here and here. And in Markdown, if you want to make a level 1 title, you can use the pound key, and a level 2, it's 2 pound key with a space. So that's what it's doing. Just going to name it properly, level data lister. So one thing, if I pause for a second, one thing I should have done already is test my code in Revit. That's the beauty of it. Here, that's Python. So I don't need, with pyRevit, I don't need to compile the code before. I don't need to do that because it's already compiling dynamically the code and interpreting the code itself. So if I go to pyRevit, pre-flight check, I will have probably 2 grid lister because I didn't edit the title of the check and the definition of it. So it might take some time and even might throw an error, but we'll see. If I type level, do I have something? Nope. So that should be grid. I should have 2. Yes. I don't know which one because I didn't name it. So let me name it properly before that and do the naming. But levels, number of level names, grid pinned should be levels pinned. And you see in the comments, I just wrote down the output of what I should get in general. Here, I'm not going to rename the bubble thing. It doesn't really matter for the type names, but just to let you know that it's always good whenever you don't know exactly what you're doing. Just whenever you output this first time and print it in the output window, just write it in the comments. That's really helpful whenever you want to rearrange the data differently. And this one, I should rename it with F2 as well. Grid scoped. I can go there. And that should do, let me check. Name, type in, cover, grids should be leveled. Name, type in, scope box should be good. And here, that's one thing I didn't describe so much. The name here is going to be the title of your check in the pre-flight check window. So I need to name it properly here. If not, I will get still the grid thing. And I just need to replace those list levels if they are pinned, scope boxed, or named. And these two for grids, for level. And that should do. The rest doesn't need to be changed. So I'm just going to save it, even though I don't need to because I have the autosave. Whenever I'm missing the focus or I'm going out of this window, it's saving automatically. So let's run the pre-flight check. It's going to take a few more seconds because on my computer, I have lots of things happening usually and a lot of things happening on pyRevit. So that's why it takes a bit longer than for you probably. So I have my level data lister. Let's run it and see if we have errors. And we got lucky, we got everything fine. So you see that's my title that is in Markdown. Let me put that on the side to describe properly. So this level data lister in first level of HTML here, that's the one. And then the number of levels here is listed like that, here, 11. And then that's the title of my table here, that is wrote down here, and then the headers of the columns. And then I have the level 1, 2, 3 to 11, etc., etc., etc. I don't know how many minutes I have left. I'm just going to take an extra one before saying goodbye. I want to add maybe something else, some more information. So how should I do? Let's say I want to get the level of my level, which is important information, the elevation of it. So if I want to get the elevation, I need to know the name of the parameter. So I'm going to go here to know the name of the parameter for the elevation of my level. So that's level underscore LF. I could reuse something I already did here, because here I have a definition that allows me to grab the parameter value of something. So let's check and reuse that one. I'm just going to copy paste that one. It's not going to be level types. It's going to be level elevation. Elevation. The level collector, level type names. I don't want that. I want the levels, elevations. And then for each level in my level bucket, I don't want to get the level type. I don't need that because I want the instance. And I just need it to change to the instance. And then that's my level 11. So you see the autocomplete comes from my stubs of the Revit API. So that's why I get that, or from the stubs from pyRevit, actually, these ones. That's pyRevit because I have the DB import here of pyRevit. So that should do as a string. We'll see what it's outputting. So here, that's just the definition. It doesn't do anything so far. It's doing things here. So how to do that? I want to get my elevation. And I have some autocomplete thanks to GitHub Copilot. That's one thing that I use pretty consistently. So I tend to use it whenever it's not telling me stupid things, but it's pretty efficient for repetitive stuff. So whenever you have something that looks pretty much the same here, it's smart enough to know what to output here. So you see here, it just guessed that it could be that sort of output. So here, I'm just gonna add the elevation variable and the elevation for the column name. And then here, name, and it's elevation. Scum box and elevation. So you see that's my autocomplete, so I just tab and that's very fast. That's very bang for the bucks. It's very efficient. So levels that are disturbed, the rest should be fine. And then we go there. We rerun the BIST as a conclusion for this presentation and see if we got what we wanted. 1400, for example, so that's in the thousands. So level data lister here. And we've got known, so we got a mistake. Good. So let's fix that before leaving. Here I need to check the parameter values actually and how it's outputted. So if I get the elevation parameter level 11, which should be fine, let's check levels, elevation 1, depth of level list. I don't know what's the mistake is about, but that's okay. Level 11, okay, correct. And the value that we're looking for is not as a double, it's as value string. That's where the mistake is, as value string. Saving, going back there, running the beast, pre-flight check here. Level data lister. And we got the data we wanted, okay? So that's the whole thing. Let me sum it up just quickly. If you don't know where to go, you need to go in the checks folder of your pyRevit master install to start with, if you don't know how to do anything else. You can copy one of those as a base, and then you just have to go through the whole thing. The thing that you will need mostly will be these guys and the end class here, the model checker class. If you have at the minimum this, and after that you do your checks in a definition here that is named check model like that. It doesn't have to be check model, it can be anything for the name. And you do some checks or you display or you query things here, you should be good to go. So that's it for my presentation. That was Jean-Marc Couffin, senior BIM specialist at BIM1. And maintainer of pyRevit, one of those. Actually, we are a small team now. And if you want to participate in the forum, in the team for developing stuff, you know where to find us. Here you can find us. Those are our profile picture, and you can have our LinkedIn profile, or you can find me here or on the forum. So that's it for today. Thank you everyone for attending, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you have any question, I'll be there in the chat to answer that. Thank you.